On the morning of August 26, 2023, Jacksonville, Florida, prepared for what should have been an ordinary weekend day. The sun rose over the city just as it always had, casting light across the working-class neighborhoods and business corridors, where many were already preparing for the tasks and routines of a typical Saturday. But within the mind of 21-year-old Ryan Christopher Palmeter, something deeply sinister had been taking shape for weeks, if not years. On that day, he wasn't preparing for work or leisure. He was putting the final pieces in place for a massacre he had long envisioned. Living with his parents in a quiet Orange Park neighborhood, about 15 miles south of Jacksonville's urban center, Palmeter had become increasingly isolated, angry, and consumed by a violent, racist ideology. His descent into hate didn't happen overnight. It was slow, corrosive, and fueled by radical online content and internal mental health struggles that had long gone untreated or unacknowledged in any effective manner. Years earlier, in 2017, Palmeter had been taken into custody under Florida's Baker Act, a law allowing for temporary institutionalization of individuals deemed to pose a threat to themselves or others, after threatening to harm himself and others. But because the state did not officially adjudicate him mentally unfit, no red flags appeared in the background checks that would later allow him to legally purchase firearms. That Saturday, Ryan Palmeter woke up early and dressed deliberately. He wore tactical gear including a bullet-resistant vest, gloves, ear protection, and a black mask. He loaded his weapons into his vehicle, an AR-15-style semi-automatic rifle with a scope and swastikas crudely drawn onto the magazine and stock, along with a Glock semi-automatic pistol. Both weapons had been legally purchased earlier that year, despite his mental health history. Before leaving, Palmeter left behind a disturbing collection of writings. A suicide note, a personal will, and multiple manifestos laced with violent, white supremacist rhetoric. These writings, addressed to his family, law enforcement, and the media, made his motivations unambiguously clear. He expressed his hatred for Black Americans, praised previous mass shooters like Dylann Roof, and laid out his vision of carrying out an attack meant to inspire racial terror. He believed he was part of a larger ideological war, one he thought would resonate with others who shared his beliefs. After finishing his preparations, Palmeter climbed into his gray Honda Element and left the driveway of his parents' home, setting a course for bloodshed. His first stop was a Family Dollar store in a predominantly Black area. He pulled into the parking lot and exited the vehicle, appearing ready to launch his attack. However, an armed security guard stationed outside the store noticed Palmeter's suspicious demeanor and approached him. Caught off guard and perhaps fearing premature confrontation, Palmeter chose to retreat, returning to his car and driving away. This momentary disruption likely prevented an earlier bloodbath, but his resolve remained unshaken. He rerouted to another potential target, Edward Waters University, Florida's first historically Black college. Palmeter drove onto the campus and parked in a student lot. Surveillance footage would later show him preparing once again, donning his vest and gear, clutching his weapons. But a campus security officer, suspicious of the lone man sitting in the lot in tactical clothing, approached to question him. Palmeter mumbled something about looking at his phone for directions. The guard wasn't convinced and immediately radioed for backup. Within minutes, the guard and a colleague had decided to pursue him on foot and called the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, reporting a suspicious person. Just as they began to approach more directly, Palmeter reversed his car and fled the scene again. He knew the police were now alerted and his time to carry out his plan was running out. At approximately 1:08 p.m., Ryan Palmeter pulled into the parking lot of a Dollar General store located on Kings Road in Jacksonville's Newtown neighborhood. This neighborhood, predominantly African American and historically underserved, was home to generations of working-class families. The Dollar General was a hub for locals, a place to shop for groceries, household items, and essentials. It was where mothers ran errands, employees picked up extra shifts, and children tagged along with their parents. The store, however, lacked on-site security and had minimal surveillance infrastructure, a fact that would later come under heavy scrutiny. As Palmeter parked outside, a black Kia pulled into a space beside him. Inside sat 52-year-old Angela Michelle Carr, a devoted mother and Uber driver who was likely waiting to pick someone up. Without warning, Palmeter emerged from his vehicle and opened fire on Carr, unloading rounds through her car window. She had no time to react, no chance to defend herself. She was killed instantly, becoming the first victim of the horrifying attack. After shooting Carr, Palmeter entered the Dollar General store with calculated precision. He stormed through the front doors, weapon raised, and immediately encountered 19-year-old Anolt Joseph A.J. Laguerre Jr., a store employee who had only recently started working there. Laguerre, young and full of promise, tried to escape or find cover. Witnesses later said he tried to run toward a back exit or possibly into a stockroom. But Palmeter gunned him down before he could make it to safety. The bullets tore through his body with violent force, and Laguerre collapsed behind the store's counter. The sound of gunfire echoed throughout the building, sending customers and employees into panic. Some screamed, others ran. A few dove behind shelves while others fled through side and rear exits. The attack unfolded so quickly and with such ferocity that many inside didn't fully comprehend what was happening until it was too late. Palmeter, methodical and fueled by hate, continued his rampage. Jerrald Gallion, 29, was the next victim. He had just walked into the store, perhaps to grab a few items, perhaps to browse. He was known in the community as a loving father, hard worker, and a man devoted to his family. His daughter was the center of his world. In a cruel twist of fate, he happened to walk into the store during the few minutes when Palmeter was carrying out his massacre. Palmeter shot him multiple times, killing him where he stood. Gallion had no time to respond, no time to fight back. With 3 victims down and more potential targets scattered throughout the building, Palmeter pressed further into the store. He continued firing at walls and doors, attempting to locate other people who might be hiding. Fortunately, several managed to barricade themselves in storage rooms or escape out of emergency exits. Despite his firepower, the building's layout and the quick reactions of some individuals may have prevented even more bloodshed. Meanwhile, outside the store, Jacksonville police officers began arriving on the scene. As they rushed to secure the perimeter and prepare for an armed engagement, Palmeter retreated into an office or storage space within the store. Inside, he made his final move. At 1:19 p.m., just 11 minutes after the first shot was fired, Palmeter turned the weapon on himself and pulled the trigger. The sound of the final shot was heard by the officers preparing to breach. They entered and found his body, slumped near shelves and discarded merchandise, surrounded by bullet casings and blood. The AR-15 and Glock lay beside him, and on his body was the evidence of deliberate ideological hatred. The writings, the vest, and the weapon markings all pointed to a clear motive. He had come to kill black people, and he had executed that plan with chilling efficiency. The discovery of Palmeter's writings and manifesto confirmed what investigators had already suspected. He was a white supremacist who saw his act as part of a broader race war. He had referenced multiple other racially motivated mass shootings in his writings, including the 2015 Charleston Church Massacre and the 2022 Buffalo supermarket shooting. He expressed admiration for the killers and a desire to surpass their actions. His words dripped with venomous racism, paranoia, and an unwavering belief in racial purity. The documents contained explicit references to online forums where white supremacist propaganda is shared, and his writing style mirrored the manifestos of other extremist shooters who had published their thoughts before embarking on their own killing sprees. The FBI, Department of Justice, and Jacksonville Sheriff's Office launched a formal hate crime and domestic terrorism investigation, calling the incident a deliberate, ideologically driven attack. As the community grieved, more details emerged about Palmeter's background and the red flags that had been missed. Despite his prior mental health evaluation under the Baker Act, Palmeter had legally purchased the AR-15 style rifle in April and the Glock pistol in June 2023. He had previously been employed at places like Dollar Tree and Home Depot but had been let go, with his father later revealing that he spent most of his time at home, isolated, angry, and withdrawn. His parents had, at one point, confiscated his firearms and expressed concern about his mental health, but the weapons were eventually returned to him. The shooter's father, horrified by the attack, contacted police after discovering his son's suicide note and writings, but by then it was too late. Public response was swift and intense. Vigils were held for the 3 victims. Churches opened their doors for prayer and mourning. Civil rights leaders and political officials traveled to Jacksonville to speak with the families and demand accountability. Mayor Donna Deegan and Sheriff T.K. Waters condemned the attack in no uncertain terms. President Joe Biden addressed the nation, calling the act a blatant hate-fueled attack, and promising federal support for the investigation. At the same time, activists pointed to broader systemic failures: a lack of national red flag laws, the ability of mentally unstable individuals to legally purchase deadly weapons, and the glaring absence of security at the Dollar General store, especially in an area known for prior criminal incidents. In the months following the shooting, the victims' families filed wrongful death lawsuits against Dollar General Palmeter's parents and the store's private security contractor. The suits alleged negligence, claiming that Dollar General had failed to provide adequate protection despite being aware of the neighborhood's risk level. They also accused Palmeter's parents of returning firearms to their son despite knowing his mental condition. The lawsuits are ongoing and the federal hate crime investigation continues, but the emotional scars left by the attack remain raw. In the Newtown neighborhood, Angela Carr's family mourns a mother whose life was cut short while doing her job. The Laguerre family remembers a bright young man full of dreams just beginning his adult life. And Jerrald Gallion's daughter must grow up without the father who loved her more than anything else in the world. This was not just a tragedy, it was a deliberate, ideologically fueled massacre that shattered families, scarred a community, and exposed once again the deeply rooted racial hatred that still persists in America. It was a moment that forced the country to look, yet again, at the toxic mixture of unchecked hate, mental illness, gun accessibility, and social neglect. It is a story of lives stolen, warning signs ignored, and a nation still grappling with how to stop the next Ryan Palmeter before he walks into another store, armed and hateful, and changes lives forever. And so, the story of Ryan Palmeter and the Jacksonville Dollar General shooting draws to a heartbreaking end, a tragedy rooted in hatred, carried out with deadly purpose, and forever etched into the memories of a community that did not deserve the pain it was dealt. But amid the sorrow, we must also remember those whose lives were stolen too soon: Angela Carr, Laguerre Jr., and Jerrald Gallion. They were not just victims. They were mothers, sons, fathers, friends, each with stories still unfolding, dreams still alive, and love still to give. Their names deserve to be remembered not for the manner in which they died, but for the lives they lived. In a world where hate can take so much away in mere moments, we at Peaceful Stories believe it's our duty to preserve the humanity that hatred tries to erase. We tell these stories not to sensationalize but to bear witness, to reflect, and to remind ourselves why peace, empathy, and understanding are worth fighting for. Thank you for staying with us through this difficult story. If it moved you, if it made you reflect, share it, talk about it, and most of all, remember the people behind the headlines. This is Peaceful Stories. Stay safe, stay kind, and until next time, keep the stories alive.